What is up, everybody? Welcome back to our API course. Jack with devslopes.com here. And we're going to continue configuring our DigitalOcean droplet. So the next thing I'm going to do, we've already installed MongoDB and locked down the firewall and things. The next thing I'm going to do is I went and purchased a domain name. And we are going to add that domain name to our droplet. Now I went and did a search for DigitalOcean domain name, and I got this how to point to DigitalOcean name servers from custom domain registrars. Now I got mine from Namecheap, but they've got instructions here for GoDaddy, HostGator, a lot of different ones, and they're all fairly similar. And even on this Namecheap here, the screenshot they've got here of the control panel looks totally different from what it actually is now. But we're going to take care of it anyway. So I'm logged into my Namecheap console here. And all I've got to do is come down here to, this is normally set to Namecheap Basic DNS. I need to change this and set it to Custom DNS. And I need to come over here and I need to put in these 3 DNS servers. So I need to say ns1.digitalocean.com, ns2.digitalocean.com, and then I'm going to click Add Name Server and add ns3.digitalocean.com. And then I'm going to click Save here. Now, it may take a little bit for this DNS server update to propagate. When you deal with DNS, sometimes it takes a while for it to propagate out through the internet. But we're going to go ahead and roll on with this. There's one part that I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get to work until that change is complete, and that is setting up an SSL certificate. And if it's not, I'll just come back when it is available and we'll go ahead and record that portion of the video then. So anyway, we've got that done. We're going to go ahead and roll on. So just out of curiosity, I'm going to pull up my terminal here. And I'm going to pull up a new tab. And I'm just going to do a whois for my domain. And just see what it shows. Alright. Well, according to this whois lookup, the name server change has already taken effect here. So we may be good to go on that. So let's go back to our DigitalOcean control panel here. And I'm going to go to networking. And we've set our DNS, our domain to point to these DNS servers at DigitalOcean. So we need to set up our domain. So I need to put in my domain. And then for droplet or custom IP, I'm going to pick my droplet that I've got installed. And I'm going to click create record here. So when I do that, you see here it sets up this jackd942.com domain. So if I click on view domain, it takes me to the DNS records for this domain. Now then, if we want to add a DNS record for a machine name, like the first part of the address, like you have www.jackd942.com, you can accomplish that with a CNAME record. But this is the only machine, at least for now, that anything that goes to jackd942 needs to come to this machine. If you wanted to set up www, you just put www for the name here. And for the host name, you could put the @ symbol. And that would create a CNAME record to send www through to this here. I won't catch everything, so I'm going to put an asterisk here under name. And when I do that, anything you put on the front of it, it doesn't matter. It's going to send it through to this IP address. So I'm going to create that CNAME record. So we've got our main domain set here, and then we've got a CNAME catch-all that will go here. So that's really all we need to do on the DNS for now. Now we're going to handle some routing in Nginx. Nginx is the web server we're going to use. And so like we're going to put a /API on the end, and that's going to send everything to our node process. And then from there, I'll show you how that's all set up. But anyway, let's go ahead and move on. So continuing on, we need to continue setting up our droplet with node and everything. So I'm going to do a Google search for DigitalOcean node production 16.04. And that takes us to this DigitalOcean article here on how to set up a node application for production on Ubuntu 16.04. So we're going to walk through this guide here. We've already done the initial server setup. And we've got a domain name pointed at the server's public IP address. So the first thing we need to do here is install node. So I'm going to pull up my terminal here, and I'm going to shrink it down just a little. So we need to install the node source PPA in order to get access. So we're going to change directory back to our home directory. We're going to say curl. Actually, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to copy that, and then we're just going to paste it in here. All right. So there's our node source setup.sh. It's a bash file. And we can look at it here just to make sure that everything's cool with it. And we see here that it's going to install node version 6.x, which is what we want. So we can go ahead and run the script, but we've got to do it as a super user. So we need to type sudo bash node source setup.sh and hit return, and it's going to install some. So we've got the PPAs are installed here. PPA is just a personal package archive, and it's just a repository of software that you can install. So now that we've got the PPA installed, now we need to install Node.js. So if we say sudo apt get install Node.js and hit return, it installs. So now then, once that's done, if we look here, it shows we've got Node installed. So let's do Node-v, and you see we've got version 6.9.1 installed. Now on my Mac in the course, we used NVM to set up Node. On the server, you really want to set it up just a standalone version. You don't want to use a script like NVM to run it on there. So anyway, we've got that installed, and let's make sure we've got npm installed. And we do, so we're looking good. So we've got Mongo Node installed. We've got our domain set up. We need to install Build Essential. Build Essential is a meta package that installs a bunch of tools for being able to build and compile code. So we'll install that next. I install Build Essential on all of my machines, all of my Ubuntu machines, regardless of what I'm doing with them. We'll be right back. This may take a minute. Okay, so we have Build Essential installed. So the next thing we need to do is get our Node application over to the server. So I've got a Bitbucket repo set up for my code. And this is the exact same code that we did in the course and is available to download on the website. We're probably going to make a few little tweaks to it as we build our iOS app a little bit later. But for now, this is what we're going to get up and running. I'm going to go back to my server in the terminal here. Now, I don't want to run my node process as my user. I want to set up another user to use to run our process under. So I'm going to say sudo and then add user, and we're just going to call it API user. All right, and then I've got to enter a new password. All right, and put in a name here. And okay, so now we've got a user set up to run our process. So if we do sudo space and then su and then a dash and then API user and hit return, that is going to switch our user from Jack to API user. And you can see here in the terminal, it was Jack before and now we're API user. If I do who am I, you see we're API user. And this su command just means switch user. And we did it as root, so we basically just elevated right to the API user. So in here in the home directory, I want to grab this repo. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to grab it with HTTPS so that I don't have to set up SSH keys or anything right now. I may do that later on. But from here, I'm just going to say git clone and I'm going to paste that URL in there and hit return. Alright, I had forgot my password there. So let me try this and see if it works. There we go. Alright, so now we've got our food truck API in here. If I look, I've got everything in there. So we've got all we need right here under food truck API folder under this API user's home directory. So from here, we should just be able to run npm install. If you'll remember, that's going to look through that package.json file and install our dependencies. So this is probably going to take just a minute, so we'll go away and we'll come right back. So we got our dependencies installed. And you see here I already ran a test real quick, but we can run npm run dev. Just like we did in the course, and it fires up here. Now one thing real quick before I forget it. I can't do that. Let me go back to my regular user. I'm going to disable the firewall real quick while we do this test. Because I didn't add sudo privileges for the API user. Alright, so let's go back in here and run npm. Actually, let's run build real quick because we need to build for our. So we have our dist folder in there, and then we can run npm run dev. Alright. So let's pull up Postman and just do a test real fast. And I can't even remember what the password. Let's go back and look. So if we go to our source and we look at controller and food truck. Okay, so we need to do v1 food truck add. And then we need to go to our body and do raw and then JSON. And we need to put our JSON in here. Now what were let's look at the model real quick. All right. So we've got name, food type, average cost, geometry, and reviews. All right, so we need name for sure. And We need, what else was it? Food type, average cost, and geometry. So food type, breakfast, geometry, no, average cost. And we'll just put $7.99. And then geometry. And then we needed coordinates there. And it was an array, and we'll just put 10, 20. All right. So let's give that a shot and see what we get. Oh, I didn't put 3005 in here, sorry. So that's why we didn't get a response. Now let's send it. All right, so we got food truck saved successfully. Okay, so this is pretty cool. We've got this up and running on our server. So let me quit that, and let's just type Mongo to pull up a shell. And let's do show DBs. And you see we've got food truck API now. So let's say use food truck -API. We say show collections, we've got accounts and food trucks. So now we can say db dot db.foodtrucks.find. See, we've got one object in here, and it's Pam's Pancake House. So we're cooking with grease. We've got Node up and running. Our application is running. We are looking good. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. So the next thing we need to do, we've got all that done. We've tested the application. Now, this suggests installing PM2, which I am going to do because I really like PM2. It's similar to NodeMon, but where NodeMon is used for development, PM2 is used in production. And basically, it just stands for Process Manager, and it's a process manager for Node applications. And it lets you fire off a Node process, and it watches it. If it ever dies, it'll restart it. So we need to install it. I'm going to go back to my regular user. And I'm going to say npm install -g pm2. And we'll let that install. Okay, so we've got PM2 installed. Now then, we need to manage our application with PM2. So, let's go back to our API user. Okay. If we take a look at our package.json file, you see here our scripts for production is just npm start. And that gives us this line right here. And you see I already had it configured for PM2 here. So, if I do PM2 or npm start, it compiles, transpiles the code, outputs it to disk, and then it fires up PM2 and starts this process right here. So we've got this process running, and we can see right here that it's online. Really cool stuff. So if we want to check it, we can just type PM2 status. And you see here we get this result. So we're up and running at this point. Everything's looking good. Let's see here. We need to set it up so that PM2 fires up when the server starts up. So we need to type PM2 startup systemd. You have to run this as root. So, actually, so let's go ahead and drop out of here. And I'm back to my Jack account. Let's try to set this up without having to give that user super user privileges. So we're just going to put in exactly what it tells us to here. And this -u flag here, and then we specify API user. That tells it what user to run as. And then I forgot to put the quote on the end, so I do that. All right. So we're still up and running here. So if we run system control status PM2, you see here we're active and running. So just as the last test, I'm going to reboot the server real quick and then let it restart and log back in and just double check to make sure that PM2 fires back up and then it's run as the API user and everything like that. This is just a sanity check for my benefit because I'm a little weird like that. But I'm just going to say sudo reboot. Oh, and I'm still API user, so I need to get out. So sudo reboot. Alright, so now the server's rebooting. I'm going to give that just a minute to fire back up, and then I'll be right back. And actually, we're getting just a little bit long in this video, so I'm going to go ahead and break it off here. And we'll go ahead and put another one in. I was really only expecting this to take about 2 videos, but looks like it's going to be more like 3 or 4. So, but hey, that's okay. This is all good stuff. We'll see you over in the next one, and we'll go ahead and keep on configuring our DigitalOcean droplet.